Hi everyone, my name is Hong An and today me and Vaneng will represent Group 1 to bring with you guys a tutorial for the unit, the Introduction to Translation and Translation Studies. First, let's take a look at the outline of the presentation. In the first part, we will look through the history of translation, then we will look through the concept of translation and translation studies. Lastly, we will sum up all the ideas in the conclusion part. So now let's take a look at the historical overview of translation. In this part, there are three periods that we need to focus on: Christian era, Islam era, and today. The first one is Christian era. In this era, we can see the explosion of translating the Bible. The next one is Islam era, with the glorious period of schools of Toledo. Lastly is today period with the translation in the New World and in the 20th century. The appearance of translators happened really soon in history. They were being interpreters between tribes, or they can even be the court scribe in ancient Egypt. Those are all really important roles. Besides the importance of interpreters, we also see the need for them through the story of the origins of the multiplicity of languages, the story of the Babel Tower in the Bible. According to the story, the united human race in the generations following the Great Flood, speaking a single language and migrating eastward, comes to the land of Shinar. There, they agree to build a city and a tower tall enough to reach the heaven. God decides to punish them. The tower were destroyed and humans were punished by being made to speak many different languages. For that reason, people need a communicator to help them understand each other. The other reason is the emergence of international language, Esperanto, which was created by Ludwig Zamenhof. This language succeeded in small circles of scholars, but it did not last for a long time. Now the language that comes closer to being an international language is in English, when we see most of materials, documents, etc. written in English. So, those are all the brief introduction of the history of the translation and the need for translators. From now on, we will look closely about the translation activity in each period of history. The first one belongs to Christian era, which is the time that people translate the Bible. So why do we need to translate the Bible? This question was answered by two main reasons. First one is language, because language means maintaining and transmitting traditions and communicating with a higher power, God. Translating one's sacred writing and prayers into another language was always a critical decision. Other reason is that the Judeo-Christian Muslim world derived its culture from a common source, Hebrew books. When it began to completed, it began to be dispersed around the Middle East and spoken in several languages. Due to that fact, the Hebrew text became canonized. It was recited and written in Aramaic for practical purposes. Now let's take a look at some notable versions of the Bible. The first version is the Latin Vulgate, translated by Saint Jerome from Greek and Hebrew into Latin. This contribution left the Church a vast corpus of translation and commentaries, which were pivotal for the development of Christian civilization. Next one we got Slavic Bible, in which Saint Cyrilland and Saint Methodius translated the Holy Scriptures into the Old Church Slavonic. We also got the French Bible, German Bible, and especially the Die Bible translated by Martin Luther. That is also a great impetus of the activity of Bible translation, as Martin Luther not only broke away from Rome and had established Protestantism, but also paid close attention to the principle of translation and to the establishment of the German language as a functional language. Lastly, also a fascinating one is the version of the English Bible. In the 9th century, Alfred the Great translated the Bible into English. In the 16th century, many translators that same Alfred tried to rescue English from foreign invaders by translating the Bible. For that reason, biblical translation in England reached a level of high drama. Then the translation of the Bible was affected by both the Reformation and the invention of the printing press. In this time, William Tyndale played a significant role as he translated both the Old and New Testament from Greek and Hebrew into English. He has a very unique style of translation when he put emphasis on clarity and function of English, which is out of favor with the rulers. They try to kill him, but they cannot kill the spirit of his work. Specifically, Henry VIII reintroduced the English Bible without giving Tyndale any credit to spread his version of translation. Even the authorized version, King James Version, which marks a cultural as well as religious turning point in English history, was also largely compiled from Tyndale's work. In conclusion, we can sum up all about the Bible translation activity is Bible is the most translated book in the world. It is translated into 2,000 languages and dialects in the world. An incredible number, isn't it? So that's all about the biblical translation. Now let's take a look at this translation in the East, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. First, in East Islam, the most notable translation work may be Quran, sacred scripture of Islam, which is considered untranslatable. All translations of the Quran are usually just considered as explanations. Besides the translation of the Quran, we also have the ambitious program of translating the classics, notably Greek philosophy, astronomy, and medicine of Muslim Empire, which gave rise to such prominent translators such as Hunayn ibn Ishaq. Yet, thanks to the Islamic scholars, a bridge between antiquity and the modern world was built. Next, we have Hinduism in India. As we all know, India has more than 1,500 dialects and languages, with the 16 official languages. Therefore, translation is the thriving industry in this country, and the most translated work of Hinduism is Bhagavad Gita. This book was translated to be the means of promoting the teaching of Hinduism. Lastly, we have Buddhism. Compared to Hinduism, it is considered more universal and ecumenical. It has spread its teaching throughout Asia in many languages. The sacred language of it is Sanskrit, and they were translated into Chinese by Huangsha. So that's all about the Christian era. Now let's take a look at the glorious period of time in Islam era, which is period that so-called schools of translators of Toledo flourished in the Spanish city during the 12th and 13th century. In this time, Toledo was seen as a crossroad of culture of the world. All the cultures were written in Arabic and then translated into Latin and the new languages of Europe. By those reasons, Toledo attracted many translators around the world. The most critical one is the part played by Spanish-Jewish translators, specifically the Ibn Tibban family, dynasty of translators. That is because they were the one who formulated a theory of translation based on the knowledge of source language and target language, as well as the subject matters. Those works still remain until today. Past the Islamic world, we move on to the next period of history, translation, which is the New World in today's period. Among all the parts, this may be the most unhappy one. We can see that during the great discovery of Columbus and other discoveries, translators and interpreters played a role as a bridge between the white man and other races, between conquerors and the colonizers. The language of the colonizers at that time did not receive a deserved respect. They were forced to use the language of the conquerors, which is English. This resulted in the anomalies in the US that although they have a culturally varied population coexist, translation is not really developed, as they don't need translators to translate English to their mother tongue and vice versa. The last stage of the history of translation in this unit is the 20th century. Translation in this time has seen some good times and bad times. In bad times, translation was affected by the totalitarian regime from fascism, communism, and Nazism. Those totalitarian regimes even used active terrorism against translators. On the other hand, translation also had many good times when many translation programs were launched to revive the use of national languages such as Irish, Gaelic, and Hebrew. Specifically, Hebrew It is the combination of a national language with American English as working model. Besides, in this century, we also see two language phenomena became dominant. The first one is American English having a growing influence as international language due to the pop culture and high technology explosion. The second one is the re-emerge of the national languages from Baltic Sea to the Far West. Near the end of the 20th century, we saw many important events: the end of the Cold War between the West and the Communist bloc, emergence of high technologies such as satellite, fixed internet. Those events result in the need for international communication, which creates a huge need for more translators. So, that's all about the information that you need to bear in mind about the history of translation. So now let's move on to the concept of translation and translation studies presented by Vinay.